So, my name is Nate Dandridge, and today we'll be talking about the Supreme Court case of Flowers versus Mississippi. And this case was argued on March 20th, 2019, and I'm in Mr. Brubaker's Block 3 AP Government class. So, a couple facts about the case. A man named Curtis Flowers was on trial for the murder of 4 employees at a furniture store in Winona, Mississippi. Sorry, it's a little funky county. And he was convicted and he was sentenced to death. The Mississippi Supreme Court reversed this ruling because Flowers' right to a fair trial was violated by admission of evidence of the other 3 victims. Now, he was tried a second time, and the Mississippi Supreme Court reversed and remanded again on the same grounds as the first time they did. Now, there was another trial, and the court tried him for all 4 murders and found him guilty, and he was sentenced to death. Now, in the 4th and 5th trials, there were all accounts of capital murder, which resulted in mistrials because the jury wasn't able to reach a unanimous verdict. Now, the 6th trial was here. In the 6th trial, he was convicted of all 4 murders, and he appealed his conviction on the grounds that the state violated his 6th and 14th Amendment rights during the jury selection process. And the prosecution used the selection process to exercise its preemptory strikes in a racially discriminating way. And they did this by turning down 5 African American potential jurors. Now, during Flowers' first 5 trials, the prosecution also struck away over 85% of the black potential jurors. The court upheld the ruling for the state because of the way it decided in Batson versus Kentucky in 1986. Flowers sought review by the U.S. Supreme Court, who granted cert to question whether or not the Mississippi Supreme Court erred in how it applied Batson versus Kentucky in the case. Batson versus Kentucky was a trial very similar to this one. And this was when a black man, Batson, was on trial for second-degree burglary of stolen goods. Now, it's not exactly similar because Flowers did kill 4 people, and Batson was only second-degree burglary, but same type of thing. But during the jury selection process, the prosecutor used his preemptory challenges to strike away 4 black potential jurors, which resulted in an all-white jury, and Batson was convicted on both charges. So Flowers used Batson to argue that the state had to exercise its preemptory strikes in a they had used their preemptory strikes in a racially discriminating way. And then there were 4 cases of racial discrimination in Flowers' 6th trial during the state's preemptory strike. And it was clear that the state was relentless in trying to strike away all potential black jurors. And then there was one potential juror they were specifically trying to strike away, which was Carolyn Wright. And the court also said that in the 6th trial, the state's preemptory strikes followed the same pattern in the first 4 trials, which seems as if makes it sound as if this was a continuing issue in the trial. The state also questioned the black jurors a lot more than they questioned the white jurors, and there was a significant difference between the jurors struck and those not. So the court found that the state's preemptory strikes were not motivated by discriminatory intent. Justice Alito wrote a concurring opinion that said he agreed with the court's judgment, but he would be less likely to decide or rule this way in future cases simply because this case had very many unusual facts, and the way he kind of worded it is saying that if the case was more simple, he probably would have ruled the opposite way. Now, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a dissent in which Justice Gorsuch was a part of, and they criticized the majority for ignoring the race-neutral reasons the state gave for striking away Carolyn Wright, and they also argued that the court should not have granted the case in the first place. And although they did that, they believe they decided the case wrongly. Justice Thomas specifically mentioned the Batson case, saying that it requires the duly convicted criminal to go free because a juror was arguably deprived of his right to serve on a jury. And this case altogether, I think, is very important and very significant because it really outlines what the lawyers can and cannot do in their preemptory strikes. And it is a case that can be looked upon by future lawyers on how they can exercise their preemptory strikes in the jury selection, and whether or not would be considered racial discrimination or not. Now, personally, I do not agree with the ruling. I think this case was a clear violation of the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment guarantees you to an impartial jury. And I looked up the definition of impartial, and impartial is defined as the treating of all rivals or disputants equally, fair and just. So during the preemptory strikes, the African American potential jurors were not treated equally. They were questioned more than the potential white jurors, and the prosecution seemed to go out of his way to prevent African Americans from sitting in on the jury. Now, that's not the definition of an impartial jury. Impartial is everyone is treated equally, and it is fair and just, which it obviously sounds as if they weren't treated that way. And that wraps up my vlog. So thank you for listening to my vlog about Flowers v. Mississippi.